Welcome to episode 54 of the Becoming MindStrong podcast. Today's episode is about a balance between grace and tough love. Check it out. So within my company, MindStrong Fitness, we have Ignite, our 12-week program. And one of the things that we are preaching endlessly is giving ourselves grace, because most of us have come up in the health and fitness world in that black, white, all in, all out mindset that we've talked quite a bit about this season. And along with that comes beating ourselves up, right? If we have lived life, especially in this category, in that fixed mindset, in that I'm all in or I'm all out. I'm either eating clean 6 days a week or I'm binging on Oreos and I'll start again next month. I'm working out 5 days a week, or I've messed up my plan and I'll start again next Monday, whatever the arbitrary date is, right? If we've spent our life on those terms, then what tends to happen is that we beat ourselves up when we quote unquote break our diet, right? That if we were to red flag the thoughts going through our heads, things like, who was I kidding thinking this time would be any different? You've never stuck with a workout routine more than a month. You were kidding yourself thinking you'd actually do it this time. We could spend 2 hours talking about the beating ourselves up, the limiting beliefs that go on in our heads. So for that reason, we tend to spend a lot of time preaching, teaching about giving ourselves grace, because the reality is you are never going to stick with this if that's how you're talking to yourself. If you don't do the work to retrain your brain to be your best coach, if your plan is, well, I'll just beat the crap out of myself until I do what I'm supposed to do, let me save you a lot of time and heartache. You're never going to do it. Because as we know, if you've hung out here, we are pleasure-seeking creatures. We are designed to avoid pain first and foremost, and then seek pleasure. And berating ourselves, beating ourselves up, telling ourselves how much we suck, that is pain. We are not going to stay in that state. We're going to do everything we need to get back to homeostasis, to get back to our comfort zone. And I mean, we could have a whole bigger conversation how unfortunately that is the comfort zone for a lot of people. So because we know that most people, women especially, because we tend to default to beating ourselves, to being a jerk to ourselves, we tend to preach a lot of giving ourselves grace. Now, it came up very organically. I remember the exact conversation with someone where they said, well, Rachel, I feel like I'm giving myself too much grace. Like what's happening is I won't track my macros one day and I'll be like, that's okay. This isn't about perfection. It's about the choices you make consciously the majority of the time. And then the next day, I won't track my macros again. And I'll say, that's okay. Give yourself grace. And then down the rabbit hole we go. So the question that this person posed to me was, how do I know the balance between when I need to give myself grace and when I need to kick my own butt a little bit? And I love this question so much because what it brought up for me was this idea of head in the cloud versus feet on the ground. So if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, or you do anything in the creative world that has a business tied into it, there's something we talk a lot about in that world, which is head in the cloud, feet on the ground. And what that simply means is we need to have a balance of creativity and logistics, right? If you are someone who's naturally a dreamer, you're the creative type, your head's always up here in the clouds thinking about the next big idea and whatever's coming next. That's a really important part of being a business owner, of being an entrepreneur. And if you don't understand data, if you're not in control of your finances, of the statistics coming in from your Facebook ads, whatever it is, your business is not going to be successful. So, and vice versa, right? If you're all data, but there's no creativity, there's nothing new, you don't understand how to message and market and get people to feel something through your copyright, you're not going to be successful either. So we need to have this balance, whether it's us learning to do both or hiring people into our team. Any successful business entrepreneur, I mean, the same could be said of teachers. This can be used in any profession. You need to have that balance of head in the cloud, feet on the ground. And the same is true when we're going to talk about grace versus tough love. Now, I will say, and I talk about this openly in Ignite, I could do a better job. Something that I'm working on as a coach and as the owner of MindStrong is I gear so much towards grace that I could probably lean into the tough love part a bit more. And I spent some time thinking about that. Why do I do it that way? And it's not because I'm like some big softy, because when I was a middle school teacher, I was the tough love teacher. My kids knew I'd go to the ends of the earth for them. And I kicked their butts. Like the expectation bar was set higher than probably any teacher they had. So I thought about why could I be like that with my students? But when it's with adults, why do I go more towards grace? And the answer is what I alluded to in the beginning of this episode. I think most women, especially, we do enough tough love on ourselves, right? We don't need any more of the tough love. We need the grace. And the truth is, we need a balance. So, what does that look like? What does that mean? If we're right now, we're talking very head in the clouds, let's talk feet on the ground. We've already said, if your plan is to berate yourself, to beat yourself up about this process, if you are all feet on the ground, like hit your macros every day, get your workouts in, do what you're supposed to do, and anytime you mess up, you're going to give yourself grief about it, you're not going to stick with it, right? And the other side of that is if you're giving yourself grace every single day, well, you didn't track your macros today. That's okay. You're still sparkly and wonderful and people still love you. That's true. And if you do that the next day and the next day and the next day, and you never really actually hit your macros, guess what? It's not going to work, right? We can rainbows and glitter and unicorns ourselves all we want. At the end of the day, macros are math and science. They work when you hit them. They don't if you don't. Or at least if you're, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're getting within the scheme of them, you'll see progress. But if every day it's like, oh, I don't really feel like tracking, I'll just give myself grace. You have that option. The world's not going to end and you're not going to see results. So, how do we find a balance between the two? The answer to that is going to be very particular to the individual, right? For some of us, you have to know, first of all, how you tend to be toward yourself. If you're someone who's beating yourself up all the time, you're leaning more towards feet on the ground, and we need to practice that grace part. If you find yourself constantly giving yourself grace, which at some point we could start to say making excuses, then we need to work towards the feet on the ground. This is never going to be a 50-50 split, right? All of us are naturally inclined one way or the other. I am naturally inclined because of my upbringing to be a more feet on the ground person. I have had to do a lot of personal work to lean into my head in the clouds part, which is interesting because I was a musician for so long, which you'd associate with a creative type, but that's how strong my upbringing was. For other people, it's the opposite, right? The head in the cloud part comes naturally. They have to work towards the feet on the ground. We all have to work towards it, but it is never going to meet in the middle. You're always going to lean one way or the other, and that's okay. So first and foremost, we have to identify which way do I lean, right? Am I giving myself grace every single day, or am I beating myself up more times than others? From there, we have to get real with ourselves, right? There's a level of personal honesty that we need to embrace. And yeah, if I don't hit my macros today, if I choose not to track, the world is not going to end. No one's going to love me less. And I'll get right back on tomorrow. Now, when tomorrow comes and you don't feel like doing it again, now maybe we take a step towards the tough love part, the feet on the ground. Listen, you do not have to track today. The world is not going to end. No one's going to love you less. And you'd made that choice yesterday. So if you want to make it, by all means, go ahead. Like nothing's exploding if you don't. And you're not going to be hitting your goals, right? We know that macros are math and science. What if I just track today, right? I get to have this conversation again tomorrow. I get to make another choice. What if I just do it for today and see how I feel? I'm not going to commit to the week. I'm not going to commit to the month. I'm just going to try it. That's one option to get your feet on the ground. Maybe after all that, you decide, no, like it's not the day. I'm going to take another day off. Cool. At some point, we have to get real with ourselves, right? If you're on day 3, day 4, day 5, and you're still having this conversation every day and you're still deciding not to, again, that is your choice. Nothing is ending if you don't, and you're not going to see the results. So as you know, if you've hung out here before, there's never a have to, there's never a should. And when we're weighing the pros and cons, when we're stepping into our power of choice, we have to be balancing this head in the cloud, feet on the ground. Yes, it is always a choice. And every choice we make in life has a result, right? If you choose not to pay people say there's no like death and taxes, right? I don't buy that. Death, yes. Taxes, absolutely not. Don't pay your taxes. Now, the result of that is that you'll go to jail. And that's a choice you get to make, right? You can choose not to brush your teeth every day. And the result of that is that people will probably avoid you. Doesn't mean you have to brush your teeth. Doesn't mean you should brush your teeth. It just means when you make that choice, this is the result of that choice. And it's the same thing here. At the end of the day, macros are math and science, and they work. If your goal is to build lean sculpted muscles, you need to go to the gym and push your muscles to do what they can't yet do. Does that mean you beat yourself up if you miss a day? Nope. Does that mean that if you don't go to the gym, you'll build muscles? Nope. You need to go to the gym if you want that to happen. So I say this to say, it's always a choice. There is never a should. There is never a have to. We always need to be giving ourselves grace when we make a choice not to. And the other part of this conversation, the piece we need to weigh in as well, is what is the result of that choice I'm making? Now, you weigh the pros and cons, right? Knowing if I make choice A, here's the result. If I make choice B, here's the result. We make our choice. We give ourselves the permission we need to make that choice. We move on with our life. We do it again the next day. When we're making these choices, it is not for the rest of our life. It is not for the rest of the month. It is not for the rest of the week. It is for today. And we get to make that choice every single day, knowing that neural connections, the way that we learn, are that every time we repeat a thought or feeling or action, this stuff called myelin is coding that neural connection and forming a habit. So as we step into that power of choice, as we decide, do I want to give myself grace today, or do I want a little tough love? Part of that choice is which neural connection do I want to form, right? This goes a little deeper than what result is going to come with that choice. There's an immediate result and there's a neural connection that's being wired. Now, all of that said, that's not a pressure thing, right? There are days you're going to have this conversation. You're going to say, okay, listen, Rachel, I do not feel like tracking macros today. I just want to sit down. I want to eat this pint of ice cream. Cool. Let me think this through. If I sit down and I eat this pint of ice cream, probably going to feel some blahness afterwards, right? Going to get a sugar rush, going to feel like bellyache. I shouldn't have done that. And I can do it. World's not going to end. Or I could choose to have a serving of ice cream, fit it in my macros, and feel great. And if I make choice A and I house the whole pint, I'm now wiring in the neural connection that some days I just don't track my macros and I eat a pint of ice cream, even if it doesn't feel good. Or I can wire in the neural connection that says I can have ice cream whenever the hell I want without shame, guilt, regret, or a bellyache because I fit it into my macros. Now, at the end of that entire thought process, which will take you about 10 seconds when you're doing it in your head, there's still going to be days you choose to house the whole pint of ice cream, and that's okay. You make that choice. That's where you give yourself grace, and you make the choice the next day. Right? This is never about all in, all out. This is going to go back to our conversation about fixed mindset, growth mindset. This is not all or nothing. This is not all in, all out. This is about the choices we make every day. And for the purposes of today's conversation, we need to make sure that while we're making those choices, we're finding that balance. Yes, we need to give ourselves grace, and we need to understand that every choice we make comes with a result, and it's up to us to choose each and every day. For more on MindStrong Fitness and how to work with us, visit www.mindstrongfitness.com.